Ambassador Ji-woo Kim adjusted her formal diplomatic uniform one last time as she stepped into the massive crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council. The structure itself was breathtaking, walls that seemed to be carved from pure starlight, reaching up into darkness that held floating observation platforms filled with alien dignitaries. 47 different species had gathered here today, and the air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert her words into languages that used everything from sonic clicks to electromagnetic pulses. Ji-woo had dreamed of this. Moments since she was a child growing up in Seoul, watching the first human ships return from deep space with news that we weren't alone. Now, 20 years later, she stood as Earth's voice before the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. Her hands trembled slightly as she activated the speaking platform, but her voice remained steady. "Honored representatives of the Galactic Council," she began, watching as her words appeared in holographic displays throughout the chamber in dozens of alien scripts. "I stand before you today not as a conqueror or competitor, but as a representative of humanity's deepest desire, to find our place among the stars as friends and partners." In the Sorok section, General Tektar's massive reptilian form shifted uncomfortably on his heating pad. His scaled hide was scarred from countless battles, and his yellow eyes tracked Ji-woo's every movement with predatory focus. The humans had been expanding their territory at an alarming rate, 12 new colonies in just 3 years. Their mining operations in the Kepler sector were already producing more rare minerals than some species managed in decades. "We offer our technological innovations," Ji-woo continued, gesturing to a holographic display that showed human achievements. "Our medical advances have eliminated diseases that plagued our world for millennia. Our agricultural techniques could help feed hungry worlds across the galaxy. Our cultural diversity brings new perspectives to ancient problems." The Vex Collective's section buzzed with agitation. Their insectoid forms moved in perfect synchronization, compound eyes reflecting the chamber's light like tiny stars. To them, humans were chaos incarnate, emotional, unpredictable, breeding at rates that defied their careful population mathematics. The mammalian species had gone from a single world to 23 colonies in less than a human generation. Ambassador Kerthava of the ancient Zephyrian Empire tapped his crystalline fingers against his seat. His people had ruled star systems when Earth was still covered in ice, and they found human ambition disturbing. These newcomers acted as if the galaxy owed them something, as if their rapid technological advancement gave them the right to claim whatever they desired. "The Terran Protection Accords," Ji-woo said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber, "represent more than just a defense treaty. They represent hope that different species can work together, that the galaxy can be a place where advancement comes through cooperation rather than conquest." But even as she spoke, she could feel the resistance building in the room. The older species exchanged glances that needed no translation. Humans were the newcomers here, the children at the adults' table, and they were asking for privileges that other species had taken centuries to earn. General Tektar activated his personal communicator, sending a coded message to his operative positioned in the chamber's maintenance section. The plan had been set in motion weeks ago, during closed-door sessions where the real decisions were made. The Sorok couldn't allow humanity to gain protected status. It would legitimize their expansion and make military action against them. Nearly impossible. "In closing," Ji-woo said, raising her hands in a gesture of openness that had become humanity's signature diplomatic pose, "we ask not for dominance, but for partnership. We seek not to rule, but to contribute. Earth's children have looked to the stars our entire history, dreaming of the day we might join the greater galactic community as equals." The words were barely out of her mouth when the plasma disruptor activated. Hidden within the chamber's atmospheric processing system, the weapon had been invisible to security scans. The energy beam struck Ji-woo with surgical precision, her body dissolving into constituent atoms in the space between heartbeats. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates from peaceful species cried out in horror, while others remained ominously silent. Security drones swarmed the area, but there was nothing left to protect. Where Earth's ambassador had stood moments before, only empty air remained. General Tektar stood slowly, his massive form commanding attention. "Tragic malfunction of the environmental systems," he announced, his voice carrying false regret. "These older stations sometimes have equipment failures. Perhaps this is a sign that humans are not yet ready for the responsibilities of galactic citizenship." The emergency session convened within hours. Without their advocate, humanity's application was doomed. Species after species spoke of the unfortunate accident and the need for proper safety protocols. By the time Earth's backup diplomatic team arrived, the vote was already over. Humanity's bid for protection was rejected unanimously. The assassination was officially recorded as a technical malfunction. Earth's children would remain alone among the stars, exactly as the galaxy's established powers had intended. The quantum communication array on Lunar Station received the transmission at 1437 Universal Standard Time. The automated systems processed the data in microseconds before routing it to Earth's primary communication hubs. By 1438, every news network on the planet was broadcasting the same horrific footage. Ambassador Ji-Woo Kim dissolving into nothingness before the assembled Galactic Council. In Seoul, commuters stopped dead in the middle of bustling streets, as massive holographic displays showed the assassination on repeat. The sound of the city, traffic, conversations, construction, faded to an eerie silence as millions of people processed what they were witnessing. A street vendor selling traditional Korean snacks sat down heavily on his stool, tears streaming down his weathered face as he watched humanity's greatest diplomatic achievement end in murder. Across the Pacific, Times Square in New York became a sea of upturned faces, all staring at the towering screens that usually advertised products and entertainment. Now they showed only death. A child tugged at her mother's coat, asking why everyone looked so sad, but the woman couldn't find words to explain that their species had just been declared unwelcome in the galaxy. In Lagos, workers poured out of the massive vertical farms that helped feed Earth's growing population. The holographic displays built into the city's architecture showed the same scene over and over, their ambassador reaching out her hands in friendship, then vanishing in a burst of lethal energy. An elderly man who remembered when humans first reached the stars shook his head slowly. "They killed our voice," he whispered to no one in particular. Mumbai's floating districts went silent as the news spread through neural networks and traditional broadcasts alike. In the research facilities where humanity's brightest minds worked on technologies that might one day rival the alien powers, scientists and engineers stared at their screens in shock. Dr. Priya Singh, head of the Quantum Drive project, watched the footage with growing fury. They had killed Ji-Woo simply for asking to be equals. President Dong-hyun Park stood in the emergency command center beneath Seoul, surrounded by monitors showing reactions from every corner of human space. The 23 colony worlds were all broadcasting the same footage, and the responses were identical everywhere: shock, grief, and a growing rage that seemed to pulse through humanity's communication networks like a living thing. "Madam President," his aide said quietly, "the planetary networks are requesting your response." Park nodded slowly, composing himself before stepping before the cameras. When he spoke, his words reached every human settlement from Mars to the outer colonies of the Centauri system. "My fellow humans," he began, his voice heavy with grief. "Today we learned that the galaxy views our desire for peace as weakness. Ambassador Kim died believing that different species could coexist through understanding and mutual respect. She was wrong about them, but she was right about us. We will mourn her properly, as befits the greatest diplomat our species has ever produced." The funeral preparations began immediately. Ji-Woo's body was gone, vaporized by alien weapons, but humanity needed something to focus their grief upon. A symbolic casket was crafted from metals taken from every human world, inscribed with words of peace in over 200 human languages. The procession through Busan drew crowds that stretched for kilometers. Hover cameras captured every moment as the casket moved slowly through streets lined with cherry blossoms that bloomed out of season, as if nature itself was mourning. Children threw flower petals while adults stood in respectful silence. Many, wearing traditional Korean hanbok, alongside modern clothing in a display of cultural unity. Captain Min-ho Kim walked behind the casket in his Earth Defense Force uniform, his sister's diplomatic medal pinned to his chest. The younger Kim had always lived in Ji-woo's shadow. She was the brilliant diplomat, while he was merely a competent military officer. Now he carried the weight of speaking for both of them. When he reached the memorial podium overlooking Busan's harbor, where massive cargo ships from the colonies delivered resources to keep Earth thriving, Min-ho looked out at the sea of faces. Billions more watched through holographic displays and neural links as he struggled to find words. "My sister Ji-woo believed in something beautiful," he began, his voice cracking. "She believed that intelligence could overcome instinct, that civilization could triumph over savagery. She spent her life learning alien languages, studying their cultures, trying to find common ground between species that evolved on different worlds under different stars." He paused, wiping away tears that he made no attempt to hide. "She stood before the most powerful beings in the galaxy and offered them friendship. She offered them partnership. She offered them the best of what humanity could become, and they murdered her for it." The crowd's silence was total, broken only by the sound of wind off the harbor and the distant hum of orbital traffic. "They think they've taught us our place," Min-ho continued, his voice growing stronger. "They think they've shown us what happens when humans reach too high, dream too big, hope too much. But they don't understand what they've really done. They've united every human world behind a single truth. We stand alone in this galaxy, and we always have." 24 hours later, the Galactic Council's official response arrived through standard diplomatic channels. The message was brief, condescending and infuriating in its casual dismissal of human life. Admiral Sung-min Lee read it aloud to the assembled representatives of the United Earth government in the underground chambers of Seoul. His voice was steady, professional, but his knuckles were white as he gripped the podium. "The Galactic Council regrets the unfortunate technical malfunction that resulted in the loss of the human diplomatic representative. We encourage humanity to use this tragic event as an opportunity to reconsider their rapid expansion policies and accept their appropriate position within the established galactic hierarchy." The chamber exploded in furious shouts. Representatives from every human world demanded immediate military action. Colony governors called for the construction of warships. Even the pacifist delegates from the agricultural worlds spoke of the need for armed response. Admiral Lee raised his hand and slowly, reluctantly, the chamber fell silent. "They think grief makes us weak," he said quietly, his words carrying clearly through the hushed room. "They think mourning makes us vulnerable. They believe that humans who weep are humans who surrender." He looked around at the faces of humanity's leadership, seeing the same cold anger reflected in every pair of eyes. They're about to discover that human tears are not a sign of weakness. They're fuel for human fury, and we're going to burn their galaxy down. The silence from human space lasted exactly 6 months, 14 days, and 7 hours. To the Sorok. High Command, monitoring galactic communications from their fortress world of Sector, it seemed their message had been received perfectly. The mammals had learned their place at last. General Tektar stood in his war room, studying holographic displays that showed human activity across known space. The data was encouraging. No new colony ships launching, no military vessels probing alien borders, no diplomatic messages flooding the communication networks. Even their trade routes had gone quiet. "Excellent," he hissed to his subordinates, his forked tongue tasting the air with satisfaction. "The death of one female has accomplished what would have taken a full military campaign. Humans understand consequences now." But while the Sauroks celebrated their psychological victory, they missed what was happening in the dark spaces between the stars. In the asteroid belt of Sol system, where mining platforms had operated for decades, something new was taking shape. Engineer Yejin Choi floated in zero gravity outside Construction Platform 7, her environmental suit protecting her from the deadly vacuum as she supervised the installation of weapon systems that shouldn't exist. The massive vessel taking shape before her bore no resemblance to the exploration ships that had first carried humans to other stars, or even the defensive platforms that protected Earth's colonies. This was something entirely different, a predator designed by prey that had learned to bite back. Status report on the quantum torpedo arrays, she spoke into her comm unit, watching as robotic arms carefully positioned warheads that incorporated technology reverse-engineered from captured alien vessels. All systems green, Chief Choi, came. The reply from her lead technician. The Saurok plasma signatures we analyzed from the assassination footage have been replicated perfectly. Their own weapons technology turned back on them. Yejin smiled grimly inside her helmet. The aliens had made a critical mistake when they killed Ji-Woo Kim in public. Every sensor in that chamber had recorded the energy signatures, the frequency, patterns, even the molecular disruption characteristics of their weapons. Human scientists had spent months analyzing that data, learning not just how alien weapons worked, but how to build better ones. Around her, dozens of similar vessels were taking shape in the hidden construction yards scattered throughout Seoul's asteroid belt. Each one incorporated the best of human engineering with the deadliest aspects of alien technology. Where alien vessels relied on energy shields, humans had developed armor that could absorb and redirect energy attacks. Where aliens used predictable battle formations, human ships were designed for chaos, fast, maneuverable, and utterly unpredictable. Meanwhile, in the underground facilities beneath Seoul, Intelligence Chief Haewon Seo was activating networks that had taken years to establish. The conference room was dark except for the glow of holographic displays showing star maps marked with hundreds of tiny indicators, each one representing a human agent positioned throughout alien space. Operation Sleeping Tiger is now active, she announced to her assembled intelligence officers. Every human trader, scientist, researcher, and cultural exchange participant who has been living among alien populations for the past 5 years is now receiving activation codes. The network was beautiful in its simplicity. During humanity's brief period of diplomatic contact with the galaxy, thousands of humans had spread throughout alien space on what appeared to be peaceful missions. Scientists studying alien ecosystems, traders establishing commercial relationships, researchers working in alien universities, even tourists exploring alien cultures. But every single one of them had been carefully selected and trained for this moment. Dr. Jin Seok Park, who had spent 3 years studying crystalline formations on the Zephyrian homeworld, activated his hidden transmitter and began mapping the energy conduits that powered their capital city. Professor So Young Kim, conducting linguistic research on the Vex Collective's hive worlds, started analyzing the bioelectric frequencies that coordinated their group consciousness. Trader Kyung-ho Lee, who had established profitable relationships with mineral suppliers throughout Saurok space, began documenting the locations of ammunition depots and fuel storage facilities. Each agent had seemed harmless, even beneficial to their alien hosts. Now they revealed themselves as the most effective intelligence network the galaxy had ever seen. But the most revolutionary breakthrough was happening in the secured laboratories of Dr. Taemin Yang's research facility on Luna. The brilliant neuroscientist had been working on something that no alien species had ever considered, the voluntary merger of human consciousness with artificial intelligence. "The test subjects are ready, Doctor," his assistant reported, gesturing toward a row of volunteers lying in neural interface chambers. These weren't prisoners or the desperate. They were Earth's finest pilots, engineers, and tacticians, all volunteers who understood exactly what they were sacrificing. "Remember," Dr. Yang addressed the volunteers through the intercom, "this process is irreversible. Your consciousness will be permanently integrated with the ship's AI systems. You'll retain your memories, your personalities, your tactical knowledge, but you'll also gain processing speeds and reaction times no biological brain can match." Lieutenant Commander Hyojin Nam, one of Earth's most decorated fighter pilots, smiled from her neural chamber. "Doctor, my sister died in the Kepler colony. Trades when Saurok pirates attacked our supply ships. If this gives me the chance to pay them back, I'm ready." One by one, the volunteers underwent the process. Their biological brains were scanned, mapped, and uploaded into quantum storage matrices that would become the core of humanity's new weapons systems. They became something unprecedented in galactic history, warriors who combined human intuition and creativity with machine precision and durability. The resulting ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Each vessel was commanded not by a crew, but by a single hybrid consciousness that was simultaneously human and artificial. They could process targeting data faster than any organic brain, execute maneuvers that would kill biological pilots, and make strategic decisions with both human cunning and computer logic. 6 months after Jiwoo Kim's assassination, Admiral Sungmin Lee stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Jiwoo's Vengeance. The massive vessel hung in space near Pluto, hidden from alien sensors by stealth technology that surpassed anything in the known galaxy. Around him, the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled waited in the darkness between worlds. His senior commanders filled the briefing room, men and women who had spent their careers preparing for exploration and defense, now forced to become instruments of war. Each one had lost someone to alien aggression, whether in the accidents that had claimed human colonies or the piracy that had targeted human trade routes. "Status report on all battle groups," Lee commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent months planning for this moment. "Battle Group Alpha reports ready for deployment to Sorok space," came the first reply. "All hybrid consciousness vessels are operational and eager to engage. Battle Group Beta confirms readiness for Vex collective targets. Bio-warfare systems are loaded and calibrated for insectoid physiology. Battle Group Gamma stands by for Zephyrian objectives. EMP weaponry specifically designed to disrupt crystalline neural networks is armed and ready." Admiral Lee nodded, studying the tactical displays that showed alien positions throughout known space. The enemy had no idea what was coming. They thought humans were hiding in their home system, licking their wounds and accepting defeat. "Gentlemen, ladies," he said quietly, his words carrying to every ship in the fleet through quantum communications. "Every species in this galaxy has learned to fight. They've learned to conquer, to defend, to negotiate from positions of strength. But there's one thing they never learned, one advantage they can't understand." He paused, looking out at the stars that had once seemed so welcoming, now revealed as hostile territory occupied by those who had murdered humanity's greatest hope for peace. They never learned to fight like humans do. They never learned what happens when you corner Earth's apex predators and kill the one person trying to keep them civilized. Today, we show them why humans became the dominant species on a world full of creatures bigger, stronger, and more naturally armed than we are. The fleet began to move, hundreds of ships emerging from the shadow of Pluto and accelerating toward jump points that would carry them to alien space. Each vessel carried the fury of an entire species, guided by minds that were no longer entirely human, but retained everything that made humanity dangerous. The galaxy was about to learn that grief was not a human weakness, it was fuel for human vengeance. The attack began at 600 Universal Standard Time, across 17 star systems simultaneously. On the Sorok homeworld of Sektar, General Tektar was enjoying his morning heat lamp ritual when the first reports came in. His orbital defense platforms, massive constructs that had protected the planet for 3 centuries, were going dark, one by one. "Impossible," he hissed, his scales rippling with alarm as he watched the tactical displays. The defense platforms weren't being destroyed. They were being systematically shut down from the inside. Human infiltrators, who had posed as maintenance technicians for months, were now revealing their true purpose, uploading viruses that turned the Sorok's own weapons against them. Above the planet, the human fleet materialized from stealth fields like vengeful ghosts. The ships moved with a precision that no biological crew could achieve, their hybrid consciousness pilots processing thousands of tactical variables simultaneously. The lead vessel, a sleek Predator-class destroyer, broadcast a simple message, on all frequencies. "This is for Ambassador Jiwoo Kim." 3 star systems away, the Vex Collective's primary hive world was experiencing its own nightmare. The insectoid species relied on quantum networks that connected every individual mind in their civilization. Now those networks were corrupted by viruses specifically designed to target their bio-neural interfaces. Millions of Vex drones suddenly found themselves cut off from the collective consciousness, their coordinated society collapsing into chaos. Dr. So Young Kim, The human linguist who had spent years studying Vex communication patterns watched from her hidden position as her carefully crafted digital weapons spread through their networks like wildfire. Each virus was a masterpiece of psychological warfare, designed not just to disrupt communications, but to induce the terror of isolation in a species that had never experienced individual thought. Meanwhile, Captain Min-Ho Kim led his squadron through the twisted corridors of space toward their primary target, Nexus Prime, the station where his sister had died 6 months ago. His fighter was no longer just a machine. It was an extension of his consciousness, merged with an AI that shared his memories and his rage. "Squadron leaders, report status," he commanded, his voice carrying across quantum-encrypted channels to the 17 other human-AI hybrids under his command. "Red leader, ready for breach," came the reply from Lieutenant Commander Hyojin Nam, her consciousness now distributed across 3 fighter craft simultaneously, targeting the station's main reactor. "Blue leader standing by," reported Major Dongwook Park, whose hybrid mind could process targeting data faster than any organic brain. Weapon systems show green across all platforms. The station's defenders opened fire with everything they had: plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, even experimental energy weapons that could vaporize asteroids. But the human fighters moved like nothing the galaxy had ever seen, their AI-enhanced reflexes allowing them to dance between energy beams that would have obliterated conventional pilots. Min-Ho's fighter twisted through a barrage of fire, its hull sparking as near misses superheated the armor, but his hybrid consciousness was already calculating the optimal path to the station's core, processing the movements of every enemy weapon simultaneously. "Target acquired," he whispered, his fighter's quantum torpedoes locking onto the chamber, where his sister had died. "This is for Jiwoo." The torpedoes struck with surgical precision, not destroying the chamber, but disabling the plasma disruptor that had murdered the ambassador. It was a message. Humans could have vaporized the entire station, but they chose to neutralize the specific weapon that had taken their diplomat's life. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as human forces struck at the infrastructure that held alien civilization together. On the crystalline worlds of the Zephyrian Empire, EMP weapons designed specifically for their silicon-based biology disrupted the neural networks that connected their cities. The ancient species that had ruled star systems for millennia suddenly found themselves reduced to isolated communities, their grand empire fragmenting as communication networks failed. The Corvan Trade Federation discovered that their automated cargo ships were no longer responding to commands. Human agents had infiltrated their commercial networks, turning their own transport vessels into weapons that disrupted supply lines throughout their territory. Food shipments destined for core worlds were rerouted to human-controlled systems, while military supplies found themselves delivered to empty space. But the most devastating attack came against the Saurok military itself. Their proud fleet, which had terrorized dozens of species over the centuries, found itself facing enemies that fought with a combination of tactical brilliance and suicidal courage that no alien commander could comprehend. Admiral Sungmin Lee watched from the bridge of the Jiwoo's Vengeance as Saurok battlecruisers tried to form defensive formations against his hybrid consciousness fighters. The alien ships moved with the predictable precision of military doctrine, following battle plans that had been developed over centuries of conquest. The human fighters moved like a pack of predators, each one anticipating the other's actions through quantum-linked consciousness networks. They struck at weak points the Saurok didn't even know they had, exploiting design flaws that human engineers had identified during months of analysis. "Saurok flagship is attempting to retreat," reported his tactical officer, watching as General Thekatar's massive command vessel tried to escape the battle. "Negative," Lee replied coldly. "No one who voted for Jiwoo's murder gets to run away." The pursuit lasted 3 hours as the human fleet chased the Saurok flagship across 2 star systems. The alien vessel was faster and more heavily armed, but the human ships fought with a coordination that bordered on telepathic. They herded the flagship like wolves hunting a wounded deer, forcing it toward a prepared trap. When the Saurok ship finally surrendered, its hull scarred and its weapons depleted, General Thektar's transmission was broadcast across the galaxy. "We yield to human forces. We didn't know you could fight like this." The Vex Collective lasted slightly longer, their bioships proving resilient against conventional weapons. But human scientists had prepared for this as well, deploying chemical weapons specifically designed to target insectoid biology. The same precision that had allowed humans to develop medicines could also create the perfect poisons. One by one, the great powers of the galaxy sent surrender messages to the human fleet. The proud Zephyrian Empire, rulers of crystal cities that had stood for millennia, transmitted their defeat through quantum networks that flickered on the edge of collapse. The Corvan Trade Federation offered to surrender their commercial fleets in exchange for mercy. Even the mysterious Voidwalkers, who had remained neutral in galactic politics for eons, sent messages acknowledging human dominance. Admiral Lee received each surrender personally, his face showing no satisfaction, only cold determination. When the Silrock delegation arrived aboard his flagship, General Thektar could barely meet his eyes. "You have proven your point," the reptilian commander said, his voice heavy with defeat. "Humans are not the weak species we believed. We acknowledge your military superiority." "Military superiority?" Lee repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "General, you still don't understand what happened here. This wasn't about proving our strength. This was about justice." He gestured to the tactical displays, showing the wreckage of alien fleets scattered across 17 star systems. "6 months ago, you murdered our ambassador because you thought we were weak. You killed Ji-Woo Kim because she offered you friendship, instead of conquest. You taught us that the galaxy respects only force." The alien delegates shifted uncomfortably as Lee continued, his words carrying the weight of humanity's collective fury. "So we gave you force. We gave you the full measure of human capability when we're no longer trying to be civilized. You wanted to know what humans are capable of when we stop asking nicely and start taking what we need." He leaned forward, his eyes reflecting the cold light of stars that had witnessed the birth and death of entire civilizations. "Ambassador Kim offered you partnership. She offered you the best of what humanity could become. You rejected that offer with murder. Now you get to live with the consequences. You get conquest instead of cooperation. You get submission instead of alliance." The message was broadcast across every communication network in the galaxy, carried by quantum transmissions that reached even the most distant worlds. "You killed our voice of peace. Now you will hear our voice of war. The galaxy belongs to humanity now." The age of human dominance had begun, built on the ashes of those who had mistaken humanity's desire for peace as a sign of weakness. 3 years had passed since the galaxy learned what human wrath looked like when unleashed. The Ambassador Kim Memorial Station hung in the exact coordinates where Nexus Prime had once operated, but this was no mere replacement. It was a monument to the transformation of galactic civilization itself. Admiral Sung-Min Lee, now bearing the title of Galactic Administrator, walked through corridors that buzzed with activity from dozens of species. Silrock technicians worked alongside human engineers, their scaled hands carefully calibrating quantum drive systems under the watchful eyes of AI supervisors. Vex drones, their collective consciousness now partially integrated with human neural networks, maintained communication arrays that kept the galaxy connected under the new order. The old Galactic Council chamber had been completely redesigned. Where once crystalline amphitheaters had separated species by their biological requirements, now adaptive environmental zones allowed representatives from every world to gather in the same space. The air itself was divided into sections, some humid for aquatic species, others heated for reptilian delegates, and neutral zones where humans felt comfortable, but make no mistake about who was in charge. Human security forces, their consciousness-linked armor making them move with perfect coordination, stood at every entrance. The weapons they carried were a fusion of alien technology and human innovation. Plasma rifles that could adjust their energy output for different species biology. Stun fields that could pacify everything from silicon-based Zephyrians to the gas cloud entities of the Nebula Collective. Governor Thektar, the former Sauroch general who had orchestrated Ji-Woo Kim's assassination, now served as regional administrator for the Sauroch territories. His once proud uniform had been replaced with the simple grey of a civil servant, and the scales around his eyes had dulled with age and defeat. When he spoke at the memorial ceremony, his voice carried none of its former arrogance. 3 years. I believed that eliminating one human diplomat would solve the problem of your species' expansion, he admitted, his forked tongue tasting bitter defeat. I was catastrophically wrong. We created not a solution but a catastrophe that reshaped the entire galaxy. The Vex Queen Zaran, her insectoid form now partially cybernetic after human technology had been integrated into her nervous system, buzzed her agreement. The collective consciousness of the Vex was ancient when your species was still learning to use fire. We thought we understood warfare, understood the mathematics of conquest. We were children playing with weapons we didn't comprehend. Administrator. Lee listened to their testimonies with the same expression he'd worn throughout the Reconstruction years, not cruel, not kind, just coldly efficient. The galaxy had learned to function under human rule because humans had proven they could make it function better than it ever had before. The trade routes that had been controlled by the corrupt Corvan Federation now operated with clockwork precision under human oversight. Goods flowed between worlds at rates that would have been impossible under the old system, while human-designed AI systems eliminated the graft and favoritism that had plagued galactic commerce for centuries. The Zephyrian crystal cities, once isolated monuments to their species' superiority, now served as communication hubs for the human-controlled quantum networks. Their silicon-based inhabitants had discovered that working with human technology enhanced their natural abilities rather than diminishing them. You must understand, Lee addressed the assembled representatives, his words carried by translation. Systems that converted his meaning into every conceivable form of communication. This was never about human supremacy. This was about consequences. Behind him, massive viewports showed the fleet that now patrolled galactic space, vessels that combined the best technologies from every species under human command. Sauroch plasma cannons mounted on human hulls, Vex bioarmor integrated with Zephyrian crystal matrices, all coordinated by the hybrid consciousness systems that had proven so devastatingly effective during the conquest. Captain Min-Ho Kim, now commanding the station's defense fleet, stood at attention beside the memorial plaque that bore his sister's image. The years had changed him. The grief-stricken brother who had wept at Ji-Woo's funeral was gone, replaced by a hardened military officer who understood that peace could only be maintained through the constant threat of overwhelming force. The old galaxy operated on a simple principle, Lee continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the station and beyond to the millions of worlds now under human administration. The strong dominated the weak, and that domination was justified by claiming it was the natural order. Species fought for resources, territory, and the right to impose their will on others. He gestured to the mixed crews visible through the viewport, humans and aliens working together on tasks that would have been impossible under the old system. We've created something different, not because we're more moral than our predecessors, but because we learned something they never did. Unity through shared purpose is stronger than unity through shared biology. A human Sauroch engineering team can solve problems that neither species could handle alone. A Vex-Zephyrian communication network operates more efficiently than anything the Collective or the Empire ever created. But even as he spoke of cooperation, the underlying threat was clear. Human patrol ships moved through the assembled fleet with predatory grace, their hybrid pilots ready to enforce the peace through violence if necessary. The galaxy had learned to cooperate, not through understanding, but through the shared knowledge that resistance was futile. Dr. Yejin Choi, now head of the Galactic Technology Integration Division, had spent 3 years reverse engineering and improving on every piece of alien technology in known space. Her workshops produced weapons and tools that surpassed anything the galaxy had seen, but they were designed with a single purpose: maintaining human dominance. Intelligence. Chief Haewon Seo's networks now monitored every communication in galactic space. The same agents who had infiltrated alien societies during the preparation phase now served as administrators, ensuring that local governments followed human directives while maintaining the illusion of autonomy. "The memorial you see behind me," Lee said, turning to touch the polished surface that bore Jiwoo Kim's image, "honors a woman who believed that different species could work together through mutual respect and shared goals. She was right about the possibility, but wrong about the method." In the reflection of the memorial plaque, Lee saw not the young admiral who had once believed in honorable warfare, but the administrator of an empire built on the calculated application of superior force. The galaxy had taught humanity that strength was the only currency that mattered, and humans had learned that lesson too well. "Ambassador Kim offered you partnership," he concluded, his words echoing through the station and across the quantum networks to every world in human space. "You rejected that offer with murder, believing that violence was the only language worth speaking. So we taught you to speak that language fluently. We taught you so well that you begged us to stop." The ceremony concluded with the traditional moment of silence for the fallen ambassador, but the silence was broken by the distant hum of engines as human patrol fleets continued their eternal vigilance. The galaxy was at peace, but it was the peace of the conquered maintained by the constant reminder that humanity's mercy was a privilege that could be revoked at any moment. Former enemies now served as allies, not through choice but through necessity. They had learned that humans could be ruthless beyond their comprehension when pushed too far, but also that human rule was more efficient and fair than anything they had known under their own species' leadership. The galaxy had wanted to keep humanity in its place. Instead, they had discovered that humanity's place was at the center of galactic civilization, surrounded by the remnants of the powers that had once dismissed them as primitive mammals unworthy of respect. The age of human dominance stretched ahead like an endless starfield, built on the foundation of a single truth. Those who mistake humanity's desire for peace as weakness learn too late that human wrath, once unleashed, reshapes entire galaxies. The end.